So today I've wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot over the past couple of weeks while listening to new releases. And this was sparked again by the release of Joey Badass's new album 2000 that I just listened to 2 days ago. Dropped a video on it on YouTube and everything. And so I wanted to discuss it on this podcast because I feel like to make a YouTube video about this, there just wouldn't be enough, content to be produced around it. But it's just some thoughts that have been going around my head, while listening to the album, and also just over the last couple of weeks and months listening to these new releases. And that is the way that we consume music nowadays. Because, back in the day, and this is what people always say, but I think it's gotten really extreme and to a very, very extreme point over the past couple of years. And I feel like even more ever since maybe, COVID hit 2020 now up until 2022 now. And that is, we listen to an album and nowadays we listen to it once and then it's just kind of off the shelf and we move on to the next, and then next Friday something new comes out and then we consume that and don't really digest the one that came out last week. And back in the day, and this is what we're going to get into, it was, not really the same, because you got an album, you've been hyping it up for months to come. If Jay-Z dropped a new album, blogs were writing about it. Even before blogs, before the internet, these magazines were writing about it. And you were really excited for this new album. And you couldn't wait to get your hands on it. And then you got your hands on it. And you listened to it religiously for the following weeks and months to come. I can't tell because I wasn't around back then, but that is what people talk about. And what I did growing up was when I listened to an album, it was also more special maybe 4 to 5 years ago. There are, of course, specific albums in everybody's lives that are special to them and that, when they think about a certain time in their lives, they always connect it to this album. And, I still remember maybe 2016, 2017, some of the albums releasing. I was waiting for them and then I listened to them for the weeks to come. I feel like the first J. Cole album that I was really excited about was For Your Eyes Only. And then also 2 years later, KOD. I was a little bit younger back then, maybe 15 or something like that, and I was hyping this album up so much, always talking about, J. Cole dropping in 4 weeks and stuff like that. And then we got those albums and I listened to them on repeat. I got them as a CD, listened to them in my mom's car and stuff like that. And it was a way more special connection even than I had to, let's say, the Off Season, which was the J. Cole album that dropped in 2021. That was arguably a great album. The Off Season is an amazing record that deserves all the respect that it got. And of course, I've been replaying it. I didn't just listen to it once. I listened to it a lot of times and went back to a lot of the songs a lot of the times. But it really wasn't the same. We don't have this connection to these albums anymore the same way that we used to maybe before more people got onto streaming. And I think a big important factor in this whole conversation is also the way that these songs are now targeted and used as these sounds on TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and all of the short content stuff where it's really about a little snippet of a song that blows up and that then gets all the attention. And so these songs are just made for these little snippets, and the rest of the song maybe is a little bit forgettable, and these snippets also only enjoy a very short-term success because they're used in these TikToks for, let's say, the next month or so. Longer than that, I don't see a lot of these trends really sustaining. So they're used for a month or something like that, and then it's just the song falls off. It's gotten 100 million streams on Spotify in the meantime, but after that it's really just off. And that's not the way that, it used to work before the age of TikTok as well. So I am contributing a lot of this to TikTok because, as I said, I was listening to this new Joey Badass album and I was thinking okay, if this album dropped when I was maybe 15, 16, maybe even earlier than that, 14, 15, let's say, 2016, 2017, I think I would have attributed a lot more recognition to that project. And I would have gone back to it a lot more than I maybe now will. I've listened to it twice so far, front to back twice. And a couple of songs, of course, I listened to a lot more. For example, Where I Belong, I think is an amazing record that I'm going to go back to a lot as well. Survivor's Guilt also being one of those, no doubt. So there are these couple of tracks that you, of course, put in your playlist, put in your liked songs, and you go back to. Of course, that will always be the case. People have their own subjective taste in music and their own subjective taste of what songs they like and which ones they put in their playlists and stuff like that. But this album, I don't think that I will go back to it in its entirety for a very long time. Maybe at some point I will actually revisit it. Maybe I'll do like another video on it and be like, okay, let's see how this album has aged and stuff like that. But if it's just the album, I had no other meaning attached to it, like YouTube, like making videos about it and stuff like that. I'm really not sure if just as a person, as a private person, and just as a casual music listener, or even just a music enthusiast, even that, as a hip-hop fan, if even I would go back to it as much. And I think, that's maybe, I don't see it as a problem. It's really a two-edged sword, because on one hand, you do have artists that want to create really like grand and timeless and everlasting pieces of art. The last great example I can think of, besides Joey Badass with 2000, obviously, because I love that record, is likely, Kendrick, Mr. Morale, and the Big Steppers. But even with that album, that was actually when I first started thinking about this, because that was about 2 months ago, more than 2 months ago, a little bit. I was like, I've listened to Pimp a Butterfly so many times. After I listened to it the first time, I was like, okay, let's go back and dissect everything. And with Mr. Morale, it was more like, okay, I listened to it again. Now I'm going back to the couple of songs that I liked. And maybe I'll listen to the entirety of the whole album in a few weeks to come. And that's exactly what I did. But it wasn't like I was obsessing with this album. That was the only thing that I was listening to. When I put on my headphones and I go out, as I said, my example, just my personal own experience. You all probably have your own, these things you connect with this, and I really would love to know what albums did this for you in the comments down below. Because if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, then also pop it. I'll have a Q&A in the description of this podcast. You can just pop your answer in there, because I think that's beautiful to see what albums are so special to people that they hold such a special place in their heart. But what I was going to get into is For Your Eyes Only, for example, or KOD even. It was, if I put on my headphones, the couple of months after that album dropped, it was only that album. Like, it was no other album, but I was listening, even the tracks that I didn't like, I was like, okay, well, they're still part of the album. And as I said, for one thing, it has to do with these sounds now, but also there's just so much more music coming out. Artists are trying to use this flooding the market strategy. They want to just put out as much music as possible because that's what really gets the money in. A lot of short songs that are going to get 30-second plays on Spotify so they can collect the royalties off of that. That's how that whole system works. And as I said, there are artists that are really trying still to create these, timeless pieces of art. But it really doesn't have the same effect anymore in this day and age as seen with Mr. Morale, because that is not that success. It is extremely successful just objectively, but compared to Kendrick's other albums, it doesn't hold the same importance right now. And I know a lot of people would disagree, and me myself subjectively as well, but you can look at the numbers, you can look at the sales, you can look at the ticket sales for Kendrick and all of that. And so, and on the other hand, you have these artists that are just putting out these playlists and just song after song, you could tell that they didn't really put a lot of effort into these songs. We've kind of seen Drake drifting off in that area as well, especially with Scorpion and CLB. I hope that he kind of recovers. I recently also dropped actually the last podcast that I made last week was about him falling off after Honestly Nevermind. I talked a lot about that, that special place that I believe Drake is in right now. But I do hope that we can at least see a comeback of artists trying to create great pieces of art. Maybe they can kind of connect it in a better way with getting these streams and with getting these sounds on these whatever reels and TikTok and stuff like that. I hope that some way we'll find a way to connect those two things. But it's really too bad the way that even myself, and I've kind of looked at it and I've reflected on it. I was like, what am I doing? I'm listening to a new album every week. Like, more than that, because multiple albums are releasing every Friday, and I want to be up to date because that's my job, obviously. And I listen to these albums and I'm like, did I really take the time to digest this? Did I just listen to it twice and form an opinion that may not even be that in depth or that well thought out? And so that's really the kind of dilemma that I'm in with all these albums. I try to do my best with it. So every time you're watching a video of mine, I try to give my most, best perspective on it that I can get from in that moment at that certain point in time that I can get on the album, and I try to view it from a lot of different aspects as well. But other than that, I think for people also listening to all of these releases every week that don't have the time to put as much thought into this as me because they have other jobs that they go after and stuff like that, it's really a shame how kind of like the music industry has evolved in that direction. And it's no one's fault necessarily. It's just something that's been happening and been evolving. And I hope that at least we can get more of a movement back to these great albums that we can also listen to months to come after it. And I don't think the fault is here with the artists. I do see a trend that artists, especially younger artists, are also wanting to create more of these playlists. But it's also up to us listeners. And this is the hopeful part about it. Next time you get an album that you really love, just kind of download it and listen to it every time that you go out and just kind of try to get everything in on that album. Maybe a lot of y'all are already doing it. And if you are, again, one of those things, pop your favorite album right now that you're still listening to weeks after its release, that you're really still into and that you really still want to, learn every last bit about, because that would also be very interesting to see. But yeah, that's kind of the thoughts I have on this. This is something I've been thinking about over the past couple of weeks and over the past couple of months while listening to new music. Let me know what you think about this. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What do you think we can do about this? Is it really just up to us listeners? How can we influence these artists as well to develop into a direction that would give us, honestly, objectively, better music in itself? So all your thoughts, your theories, all of this, I really want to know what you think about this. If you're watching this on YouTube, put it in the comments. If you're listening to this on any of your, favorite podcast episodes, if you're not a part of the Discord yet, then become a part of the Discord, and then just, put it in the Discord. Just give your opinion on this. I would really love to know what y'all got to say about this. But yeah, this is what I thought about this. These albums kind of drifting off in a weird direction, and how we can also, we have a certain contribution in this development as well. So that's my thoughts on this. Let me just think about this, and I'll catch you next time.